Let's talk about 3 ways you can start to shallow the golf club. Now, before you start shallowing the golf club, you need to make sure the golf club has a reason or incentive to shallow. What do I mean by that? Well, if I were to take this club, I want you to watch the club face. As I take it from this position, I start to shallow it out. What is happening to the club face? Well, you can see gradually as I shallow it more, the club face starts to get more and more open. And so if you're a player who already fights an open club face, it's going to be really difficult for you to shallow the club and hit functional golf shots because you're taking one of your issues and you're making it worse, essentially, by trying to shallow the club. If I took an open club face and shallowed the club even more and started to come down through the ball, you're going to see that club face is pointed miles to the right. I'm either going to shank it, hit it way right, or I'm going to learn to do something crazy with my hands to square the club face back up. That's usually not great for most golfers. So rule number one, make sure the club face is in a strong enough or closed enough position to allow shallowing to even happen and make it a positive thing for your swing. Number two, it's really difficult. It's not impossible, but it's really difficult if the golf club goes back in a very shallow manner to keep the golf club in a very shallow position on the way down. It's not impossible, but it is pretty difficult. A lot of times recreational golfers will get this club very horizontal, very shallow on the first, call it half of the backswing. And in the second half of the backswing, they'll start to elevate it. All this momentum is pushing the club head towards their head or towards the ball line, and that momentum carries itself into the downswing where the shaft gets really, really steep. So really, rule number one for me is making sure the club face is strong enough. And rule number two is making sure the golf club doesn't go back excessively shallow. So keeping the club in a slightly steeper position as it goes back typically creates a little bit more room and incentive for this club to shallow out. All right, if you've got those two things, let's talk about 3 ways we can actually start to shallow this golf club out. Number one is going to be the movement of the lead wrist. So I've got some terms for you. This is a flat lead wrist. This would be extending or cupping, and this would be flexing or bowing. So if I were to just start my downswing and go about halfway down, if I were to just curl this lead wrist into an extended position, you're going to notice the shaft gets a lot steeper. Conversely, if I take that lead wrist and I start to flex it or bow it, you're going to see the shaft get a lot shallower. So what I'll see a lot of players do, they'll hear this advice and they'll say, oh, I know what to do. I'm just going to bow my wrist as I take the club back. Now, I'm not saying that can't ever work, but a lot of times players that do that bow the heck out of their wrist on the way back, and as they start down, they curl their wrist back into an extended position. So to avoid this, really, in my opinion, it's a nice idea to take the club back relatively neutral, and as you get to the top, that's when we want to start to feel like that wrist is going to curl in transition as you approach the top of the swing, and then try to keep it curled on the way down. Now, it's hard to really do that well if you don't have some sort of feedback. So got an awesome training aid here from Genkus Sports. I believe it's called the G-Snap. What you do is you throw it around your hand, snap it up here. When you go to the top of your swing now, it's going to provide some feedback as you flex your wrist. So the goal would be, don't snap this product too early, but as you approach the top, as you finish the backswing, go ahead and snap that wrist and then keep that product snapped the entire way through. Now, eventually through the ball, of course, it's going to unsnap. But that would be a really nice way to learn that movement, and that is going to be one way to help you shallow the club. Number two is something called hand depth. So in the golf swing, we have vertical components, we have horizontal components. Just think of depth as a horizontal component. So this would be height to the hands, this would be depth to the hands. So how do I create this depth? I think a common logic, right, says the deeper you can get your hands behind you, the shallower the golf club will naturally be. But there's a good way to create depth and a not so good way to create depth. If I were a player that just said, oh, you want my hands to be further behind me, that could create a backswing that looks a lot like this, where the player just yanks their arms behind their body. That can actually do more harm than good. The way I want you to try to think about creating depth is more through the rotation of the body. So if I took the club halfway back and then all of a sudden I said, hey, I'm going to start to rotate my pelvis 45 degrees, you're going to see my hands start to work deeper and deeper behind me. And this would be, in my opinion, a more efficient way to create that depth. So if you're someone who really wants to work on creating some of that depth, or maybe you have really high hands, almost too high to your detriment at the top of your swing, you likely need to create more turn with the body. And one way I really like to do that is to take a club and put it across your chest right here. As a right-handed golfer, I'm going to try and take the lead side of this club, so the left shoulder part, and I'm going to try and get it over my trail foot. Okay, so what this does, it prevents me from leaning forward or reverse spine angle, right? That's going to limit some turn. It helps me stay pretty centered, and it really shows me if I'm rotating enough. Now, some keys here. Make sure your feet aren't bowed inwards, okay? Like to see a little bit of foot flare, and allow your knees to change flex. If you're trying to do this and keeping your knees really still, it's gonna be really difficult. So feet flared out just a little bit. We're gonna allow these knees to change flex and try to point that stick or this club across the body and get it to the right foot. Okay, so we've got the wrist, we've got the rotation. What's the last way? Well, there's plenty of ways, but the way we're gonna talk about today is the movement of the trail arm. So we've got two new words to learn here. We have internal rotation. Just think of internal as winning, I-N, winning an arm wrestling match, and then external as losing the arm wrestling match. So if I were to go to the top of my swing again and say, hey, I'm gonna start dominating an arm wrestling match, which as you look at me, I don't win many of them, right? If I start winning this arm wrestling match, you're gonna see that that shaft wants to get steeper. Now, of course, that's a problem in and of itself, but I also don't like what it tends to do at impact. If I were to bring this whole system down at impact, if I really go internal with that trail arm, it tends to look a little bit more like this at impact. Conversely, if I took that trail arm and I decided to lose the arm wrestling match, again, pinching that elbow and moving that elbow towards external rotation right here, well, again, that tends to shallow the club, really nice way to do it. And then additionally, as I bring that whole system down into impact, that tends to look a little bit more like this, which is what we tend to see on TV, right? So if you're someone who tends to get up to the top and you start winning that arm wrestling match, I like to take a ball. So this is a whole $2, I think, at Target or dollar store or whatever. And what I'm gonna ask you to do is go ahead and load up to the top. And when you get to the top, my goal for you is to take your trail arm and try to pop this ball with that trail arm. Again, that's that same move as losing that arm wrestling match. It's gonna help you shallow out the club. Then you have a reason to stay in posture, rotate, and deliver a nice impact position. So try this out. Thanks for watching.